So the two areas that I get questions in all the time are, why is this so hard and how do I get through it, right? So why is this so awful and painful, and am I alone? Am I crazy? Is there something wrong with me? And how do I actually move through this? How do I actually feel better? Can I move through it? Can I feel better? Is that even possible? So those are sort of the two areas that I find I get a lot of questions in. And obviously this is something that's so painful and so awful, and it's hard to understand and it's hard to work through. But I really think that there are four kind of beliefs that we have and thoughts that we have and things that we dwell on that make it a lot harder. So I want to go through those four today and kind of unpack them and help you sort of better understand them, so at least that part isn't holding you back. Now this process is still painful and really difficult, but at least we can start to be on our own side and not working against us. Because really, our mind and our beliefs and our thoughts can either work for us or against us. And in these situations, they're usually working against us and making it a lot harder. So I want to go through those in this video and kind of help support you a little better and unpack some of the beliefs and the myths around some of this. I have a lot of other videos out on betrayal trauma and other ones coming out, so be sure to subscribe and turn on the little bell notification thing if you want the videos that are coming out. And also there's a whole playlist full of betrayal trauma videos already if you want to better understand what betrayal trauma is and kind of how we move through it, and how being lied to and someone keeping secrets from us can have such a big impact on us. So check out that playlist and subscribe for lots more support and videos. And also, of course, please reach out to me if and when you need support, because I'm here and going through this alone is terrible and no one should have to go through it alone. So please reach out to me if I can help you in any way. So the four beliefs that I think really hold us back, and I have my little notepad here so I don't forget any of them. But the first one is that you think it's your fault. So some people fully take that on, as in they really believe that it's their fault, and some people take pieces of it and think that maybe some of it was their fault or they did something to impact this happening. And that really is painful, because this is one of the worst things that's happened to you, if not the worst thing that's happened to you. And so now you're starting to blame yourself for that. And I think a lot of the thoughts that come up and the questions that we have are really normal, because when something bad happens, I think a pretty normal response is, man, like, how did I not see this coming? Did I do something to bring this on? Is there some way I impacted that? All of those questions are pretty normal, and I think those take some processing through. And then, how much do you take on of the fault of this? Because if we take on too much and we take on the fault that really isn't ours, that's just a burden that we're carrying that we can't really do anything with, because we didn't cause this. This isn't our fault. And a lot of people, especially women, are sort of taught to take on the blame, take on the guilt, try to find ways to help and adjust and figure out how we can help. And while some of that is good as far as figuring out how to work through this and kind of help support your partner or support yourself or support your family, that piece is good. But taking on blame for something that's not your fault is not good, and it will cause you more pain. So that's one thing. These are all things that I work through individually with clients, but it takes time to unpack that belief. But it's really important to recognize and reaffirm to yourself that this was not my fault. I did not cause this. I couldn't have seen this coming. Now, maybe there are things that you can do to better your relationship, and there are ways that you can improve. Of course, that's true for everyone. But just because you didn't do those things doesn't mean that you caused this happening, right? So we want to improve, and we want to be a better partner, and we want to be better for ourselves, but we don't want to take on the blame of someone's poor choices, because those are their choices. That's not our fault. So that's something that you can keep working on and keep reaffirming and keep dealing with those thoughts when they come up that tell you otherwise. Keep working through that and sort of kind of unpacking that a little bit more. And that goes sort of into the next one that I want to talk about, which is you think that there's something wrong with you. So this comes up in multiple ways. Sometimes people think that something's wrong with them because of how much this is impacting them, because they can't get out of bed, because they can't move through anything, because they can't do anything anymore with this. Sometimes they think that's what's wrong with them, and sometimes it sort of plays into the other part, that it's your fault because you're thinking, well, I must have done something to cause this. There must be something wrong with me. I must not be enough. They must have had to have stepped out and done this because I wasn't meeting their needs, or I was too distant, or I was too distracted, or I pulled away too much, or I have too many issues, or I was too needy. All of those things we take on ourselves because we think that it's our fault and that we caused this. And those are all thoughts that can take us down the wrong path and leave us feeling even worse, leave us blaming ourselves, just leave us feeling awful about this and really feeling that fundamentally there's something wrong with us. And even worse, that there's something wrong with us, so I deserved this, right? That's terrible. That's a terrible feeling and thought to have. And all of this is awful. And again, all of these are not true. It's not your fault, even if you're coming up with reasons why it is, and there is nothing wrong with you. You're not perfect. There are things that you could have done better. There are things that you struggle with, but those things are not a reason for someone to do the things that they do and take those actions. So those are things that we need to differentiate. Whoa. Low battery just popped up. Anyway, so those are things that we need to differentiate, because just because you can improve doesn't mean you caused something happening. Okay, I'll just keep saying that because that's so true, and we need to distinguish those two things. Yes, you can improve. Yes, there's things you need to work on, and not working on those do not give anyone a reason to cause this much harm. So those are two different things. The next one, you think you are alone. I don't know how many times people say this to me, and sometimes it's funny because I hear it so many times a day, but people think that they're alone in this struggle. And I think we look around and we think everyone else has these great lives and these great relationships and they're doing so well, and we think that we're the only ones going through this and we're the only ones suffering. And if that's not even the case, we're the only ones that aren't handling it very well and don't know what to do with it and are handling it this poorly. So that is just not fair and not true. It's not a fair expectation to hold over yourself. I know it's hard. The thing with all of these is it makes sense why we feel that and think that, and that's probably been reinforced from a lot of people, but it's just not true, and it's not a fair expectation to have of ourselves. And when we really look at it, so many other people are suffering, so many other people have been through things like this. On the flip side, I also hear sometimes that people feel bad for feeling the way they do because they know others have it worse. But that's, again, not a helpful thought. None of these are helpful thoughts or beliefs or expectations to have on yourself. You are not alone in this. So many other people are struggling, and that doesn't mean that you should feel bad because other people are suffering more than you, and that doesn't mean that you should feel guilty, and that doesn't mean that you're alone. Like, it basically means that we are all struggling, and a lot of people are struggling in the same way that you are. And that means that there's supportive communities out there. There's people who get it. There's people who understand. And your suffering doesn't have to be alone and doesn't need to be alone and shouldn't be in silence. And we should not add more guilt on guilt on guilt on guilt for struggling with this, because so many other people are also struggling. And what we really need is to come together and be open and vulnerable, talk about how bad this all sucks, and support each other in getting through it and in healing and in just normalizing that this is a part of life that's really awful and that we're learning from and healing from and trying to get through in our own unique way, right? So the last one that ties into all of this also is you feel like it will never get better. And that's something that I hear a lot too, and it makes complete sense because the gravity of this is so major. And the timeline is also pretty long. So it's not a quick fix. It's not an easy healing process. And sometimes it feels like it will never get better, that you will never feel happy again, that you will never feel trust again, that you will never feel secure in yourself and in your relationship, that things will never be back to normal, that you'll never be able to just sit down and have like a nice dinner with your family without thinking about all of this. All of those things are real and they're hard to kind of grapple with. And it's even harder when you're alone and when you're not getting support and when you're not talking through this and when you believe any of these other things, that it's your fault, that you added to it, that there's something wrong with you. It's even harder in those cases. But you are not alone in this. You have people to support you, at least like this, right? Online communities that can help support you and kind of normalize some of this for you. And there are ways that it can get better. There's a lot of great research that's coming out that's even giving us more techniques and more kind of research back techniques to help you work through this. So it is possible to get your life back and to get yourself back, and it's not quick and it's not easy. So we need to kind of work on that expectation that it's going to be a fast process, but it's not an impossible process. You can work through it. So I hope that helped. Again, these 4 things are: you think it's your fault, you think there's something wrong with you, you think you're alone, and you think that it will never get better. And none of those are true, and none of those are helpful. So let's start working on identifying when those come up and challenging them and working through them. And that doesn't mean that we have to be overly positive, because it's not a positive situation. We don't have to be, sugarcoat everything and be positive, because this sucks and it's awful and you're going through trauma and you're going through pain. But we can challenge the thought, like, okay, this feels like this is my fault, but I'm not taking this on because I know it's not. Or, okay, I know this is a normal reaction to this, so I'm gonna try to let myself feel this and not beat myself up for this. Or, okay, I feel lonely and I feel awful, but I know that I am not alone and I know I can get through this. So just little things like that, little switches to kind of help make that just a little bit easier will help. So reach out to me if you need any support. Good luck, and remember, you are enough. This is not your fault, and you are not crazy.